morning.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I'm Amy Ravanisi.
And I'm Jen Laddick.
We're your 12th grade networking co-chairs. And today, we just wanted to run through a couple things for the PFA. The yearbook for the seniors, there'll be more information coming out, but you do have an opportunity to take an ad in the back of the yearbook. That's something you probably want to talk to your students about. Some kids like that idea, some kids not so much. If you are interested in that, you can keep looking in your email because we'll be sending out a lot of information about how to buy space in the back of the yearbook. Also, you've probably seen thousands of emails from Legacy about your senior's portrait. You definitely want to book that. We're going to be, getting those in. You have to make your final selection for photos by, I think, Christmas. So definitely book your senior photo and then make your selections. That's from Legacy. And also we're going to hear today from Jen Richardson about prom. And then we're also going to open the floor to the counseling department for any questions you might have following up on our last meeting or anything new that you may be wanting to address for your seniors' search for colleges. So thank you so much for coming, and we'll let Jen start.
I probably don't need this, but I'll just stand here anyway.
Yeah, because we're recording it.
Oh, you're recording it. Okay. So I'm Jen Richardson. I'm one of the co-chairs for the post-prom this year, and along with Elizabeth Costco. I'm not sure how many of you have been through post-prom before, but if you have, you know what an amazing, amazing event this is for our kids. It's the celebration of their 4 years here, and it's really fun. I've chaired this a couple times, once during COVID, in which we planned it 3 times, and then it never happened, and it was not fun. But anyway, so this year we're back, and it's going to be super fun, but we need everybody's help. We have a lot of ways that you can volunteer your time. But let me just go back a little bit. So this has been going on since like the 1950s, and it began as just a way to make sure that our kids are safe on prom night. They're all together. It is a drug-free, alcohol-free party, and it begins at 11:59 after the prom dance. So typically, the kids go home, they change, they get on their college sweatshirts, and they show up at 11:59. It's so fun at Waveney House, and it goes until about 4 in the morning. It has games, entertainment, food, dancing. It's an awesome night. It's on May 12th at 11:59, and anyway, we could not get this, do this without all of your help. So one thing we need from parents is your time and donations. This isn't a free event for our kids, so regardless if they go to prom or night, this is free. But we do depend on parent donations in order to make this happen. So we're hoping for $150 a family. That would be great, but any amount would be so much appreciated. We do have a live website now that you can go in and donate now. The benefit of doing it now for us is that we don't get all this money in March when we've already started planning. We began planning in July. So it's really helpful to know kind of where we stand budget-wise now versus in March when we're about to have the event, and then all of a sudden we have all this extra money. So if you could, if you are going to donate, if you could do it now, that would be awesome. And the other thing is volunteers. So we've got we have decorating, food, entertainment, games, prizes. We have so many ways that you can give of your time. So I'm going to leave a piece of paper at the back of the room if you want to put your name down, your email, your cell, and we will put you on a list, and then we can make sure that you guys are all put into the committees that you want. We need help the day of for decorating. We decorate from like 8 in the morning until 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and then your shift begins at 10 at night and it goes till 4 in the morning. So you can do the night shift, you can do the day shift, anything. We'll take any time that you'll have. And the other thing is we have a big video at the end of the night where we want all the pictures of the seniors to be up there. So Susie Nolan is doing our video this year, and we will have a deadline. I just need to confirm with her because sadly she has a conflict with the graduation the same night as post-prom. So she can't be there, so she needs the pictures in early. So we do have an email where you can send that in, and the email, I will write it down on this piece of paper, but It's also on the website. It's 2023 ncseniorvideo@gmail.com. And then we also have an email if you have any questions or volunteers or you want to get in touch with Elizabeth or I, that I will leave in the back as well. And again, anything. Yeah, typically it's usually of like them with their friends, like in high school, Saks, pretty much like older. Yes, there's lots of opportunity for the baby videos. That's the yearbook. But anyway, if you have any questions, I'll be in the back for a bit. And again, just go to the New Canaan High School PFA website. And if you click down on post-prom, all the information is on there. And this is an event hosted by the PFA, so thank you to them as well. All right, thank you.
A very fun event. I remember doing that with my daughter and I think my shift was breakfast the next day at 3 in the morning. Oh my gosh. It's a hard thing to do as a parent, but I did my piece.
Well, good morning to everybody. Mr. Egan, are you here as a dad today or as a dad of a senior? Yeah. Welcome to sort of our follow-up meeting for the senior overview. We recognize that the meeting 10 days ago offered a lot of information. Some of it might have been confusing. As I said earlier to someone, I think at that meeting you sort of listen with your heart, not your head, because if it's your first child especially, this thing is washing over you like a tsunami. And washing is probably the wrong word. So we're here to answer your questions and just to reiterate a couple of things that we think are important, as well as maybe taking a little deeper dive, as they say in the biz, about some aspects of the application process. Just a reminder that, on social media, you can let me do the reading for you and follow us on Facebook and Twitter for articles and financial aid information and other good stuff. Also that college visits have started in earnest. The kids have been terrific. You should be proud of your children. They might not speak in full sentences to you, but they actually do to college representatives, which I think is a very good thing. Those college visits, again, are posted on a good old-fashioned bulletin board outside the College and Career Center, outside the school counseling office, actually, and also on Naviance, where your children must respond that they are coming to the visit, as well as the school counseling webpage right under college visits. That place is a great place for a lot of information, including all of the senior forms. At this point, the school counselors have completed their entree into senior classes. Everyone has received a packet about the application process. The problem with the packet is you actually have to read it. So that presents a few problems, and based on some of the questions that we're happy to answer, I know that kids really, it's probably looking like another assignment to them, but there is a lot of good information in that packet. Probably the first thing that we want to consider in the college application process is the request for a transcript, and Lisa's going to tell you about that. This is our awesome registrar, technical goddess in our office, and you will see how easy this is, that your children can actually do this. You don't need to, but I'll let Lisa explain that.
Good morning, welcome. So we have made the process digital now, easier for the students. They can access it through the counseling website, and there is a link called Senior Information, and in there we have the transcript forms, which are all electronic. I'll just show you what they look like. They're front and back. And there's an early decision form that's in there as well. And we also have a FERPA waiver form that we use solely for students that are not applying through the Common App. All of these forms, like I said, are found under the senior information. There's also an early decision 2 form in there, and there's a tutorial about matching their Common App accounts to their Naviance accounts, which I know that the counselors explained when they went into the classrooms. But if you wanted to look at it and see the process, it's available. We ask for 4 weeks for the transcript request, and that's so that the counselors can write your child's recommendation letters. So the process usually, and I've gotten quite a few so far, so most of the students have followed through. They will send me this form through email, and what I do is I print it out and flag it if it's an early decision or any early deadlines and give it to the counselors. And then the counselors have their senior meetings with the students, and at that time, they, write their recommendation. They give the transcript back to me, the form back to me, and then I process it through Naviance. Also, some of the schools, some of the international schools have to be mailed. The students should know that when they add the schools to their Naviance list, and the way they would see that, it looks like a little postage stamp. And on this form, we ask them to check this box, and it explains if it has to be mailed, because then I know I physically have to send it through the post office. Other than that, everything else goes electronically through Naviance. That's it. I mean, it has streamlined so much in the past, I don't even know how many years.
Well, COVID kind of forced that on
Yeah.
us because
Yeah,
we were
yeah.
pretty old-fashioned about it. But Mrs. Granite really helps so much with kids come in if they're confused about things and don't understand something. Or once they've submitted something, if there's any, right away, they get something from the school that will say, we're missing all these documents, and the child has sent off the application and they're missing all these documents. Well, we know about it, we're still going to get it to them, and we know of our deadlines, and she's processing things, and it all takes a little bit of time. So just because your child has sent off the application doesn't mean the rest has gone just yet. And that's okay. Everything is in the air. Teachers know their deadlines, kids know, and so everything will be kind of up in the air in that la-la land for a little bit till everything, when the school is ready to download materials, they will pull everything they need. But in the meantime, they often have cross hairs where they are sending out things like, we're missing stuff, but they haven't actually looked to see that things are there. So it does get nerve-wracking at times.
So what I just thought of, that Cindy just reminded me. So when the students fill this out, sometimes they put all their schools at once, sometimes they'll only add it like their earlies. So what happens with Naviance now, it's changed, I think it's 2 or 3 years, it's called one and done. So what happens is, when I submit, even if it's the first round, if they put all of their schools, I'm not gonna say on this, in their account, in their Naviance active account, when I hit
Colleges
this.
I'm applying
Colleges I'm applying to.
Colleges I'm applying to. What happens is, I click the button one time and it sends it into wherever. So once your child actually submits their Common App, they merge. I don't have to resend it again. So if all of their schools are in their colleges I'm applying to, it just sits there until the students.
But everything gets sent.
Yes, but everything gets sent. So I just wanted you to know that. And if they only add a couple of schools now, and then they want to add some more, I ask them to send me another paper. Or they could save it to their desktop and add to it and just resend it to me, however they'd like to do it. I do ask them not to screenshot it, because when they screenshot it with their phones and send it to me, I can't print it, and then the counselors can't read it. So I ask them to actually send it as an attachment, which is very simple. They save it onto their desktop, whether it's a Mac or a PC, and just attach it in an email to me.
That makes sense to everybody?
No, there's a question.
I have one question. So on that form, there's something about electronic transcripts. How do you know if the college is, how they're accepting?
So in their college list, you'll see when they add their schools, there'll be, it looks like a little
Computer screen.
computer screen. It says CA. So that's Common App. Then you might see a computer screen that's blank. That's a non-Common App school. And
It's
then
still electronic, meaning
Still
Like
electronic.
Georgetown.
And then you'll see a postage stamp, and the postage stamp means that it has to be mailed. So if it has to be mailed, I ask them to, and all the directions are there for them, but I ask them to check this box. If it's a non-Common App school, on this form, it says, please put an asterisk next to the name, shows me that it's a non-Common App school, but I can see it also when I'm in there. And then the other thing is, Some students, even though it may be a Common App school, they may be applying directly through the institution's application and not using the Common App. So when they're adding their schools to Naviance, there is a button that they can check that says direct to the institution. And what happens, that tells me that they're not using Common App, that I can send it a different way.
Yeah.
Is there a reason why you would do it direct to the school versus using the Common App, like is one preferred over the other?
Well, sometimes I think schools send different applications. If it's like a VIP application, they're waiving the fee.
Yeah.
And so that's where they were asking for the application to come via that way. But there's no difference otherwise. As far as we can tell, they don't prefer one over the other. I would use Common App if it's offered, yeah.
So for the transcript to be ordered, we should send that form 4 weeks before we need it sent, is that correct? So if the early decision deadline is November 1, we need to get that form in by.
This week.
Yes.
October 15th, awesome. Little late.
We can send it a couple times depending on if his list, not everybody knows where they want to eat one.
Yeah, kids, it's a very movable thing, this thing, kids are adding all the time.
And the ED, for the ED form, we asked to fill this form out, and the reason we ask for this form is this way it lets the counselor know to look in Naviance for the actual ED form from Common App. So that's why we have them. This is like a backup for them.
Yeah, because we have to go into Common App, and I believe you as parents have to go into Common App and
sign.
sign off that you understand that they're applying ED. And so this form allows us to know, to make sure we check to make sure that's there. But those ED forms don't actually have to be signed till a couple of days before the early deadline. So if your child isn't sure yet, and they're getting their applications in, they can always send that ED form a little bit later. Okay.
If there's a postage stamp when you look to send your transcript, does that mean when you're sending the AP scores and the SAT scores, you also can't send those electronically? You need to kind of somehow get those printed out, stick them in an envelope?
No, I think you can.
No.
They can only receive those electronically.
Electronically, yeah, they're batched also. They wait for a large group and then they send them off electronically. That's for security reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions about the transcript?
Transcript stuff.
As you can see, it's a well-oiled machine.
That never makes any complete
Yeah,
sense.
it's like a ballet up in the cloud, and
So we'd like to tell kids this and tell you as parents that we ask the kids to put in where they're applying 3 times. It has to go into Common App, it has to go into Naviance, and then the 3rd time is our check, like, did you change your mind? And are you really applying to those schools? That's why we have that form, because kids are always changing their mind. So that's why we ask 3 times where they plan to apply. And really, nothing is in stone till the application goes out. So
That's
we
the
could
most
send
important thing.
all our materials, and then the child decides they're not applying after all. It's okay. It got sent. And the college will never look at anything until the application is actually there. Okay?
All right, thank you.
All right.
Okay.
All right. SATs and ACT scores, sending them or not sending them. There is no easy answer to this, especially this year, and unfortunately, I'm sorry for that. For what we can see, last year, the scores all went up. That what colleges received went up because kids only sent scores if they were strong and they were used for admissions. They didn't follow the usual, what's the average, if you're within the average range, send the scores, because all the scores went up. Now, the college reps that we're seeing this year, so far many of them have said, we don't want you to be afraid of that because we still want to keep SAT scores, if you are sending them, even if they're score optional, within reason. That is just clear as mud to us, and we don't know what that means. And they don't know what that means till they start getting applications and reading and comparing. If they have all really strong scores, then of kids who are submitting, what will they do with the ones who are within their usual average? So that is still a work in progress, and I'm still advising students to only send scores if they're above the average of what was sent, of what their average scores have been over the last couple of years. And Naviance isn't going to tell you what that answer is because it's showing kids whether they sent scores or not. It's showing the kids whether they were admitted. So you could have a student in there who was admitted to a university with low scores. It's not telling you that they did not send those scores. So we will know if they sent the scores. We can always help you with that process. But that is something that's become really complicated this year. So my advice is to go on to ask the colleges themselves on their websites, what are they reporting they're looking for, and with the reps when they come here to have your children ask that question too, because I don't think anyone really knows what they're going to do this year, unfortunately. Last year, 35% of the kids didn't send scores. The year before, 40% didn't send scores. Yet, close to over 80% got into one of their top 3 schools. So somebody got their score, got in without sending scores. So.
And the colleges are very forthcoming. Boston University reported 58% of their current freshman class did not send scores. Villanova reported 43% of their current freshman class did not send scores. So they really don't want this to be your sticking point. They certainly don't want it to be your children's sticking point. I would refer to the school counselor and make a decision that way. But when you look, you can't be cowed by the fact that if you look at a college's profile, those scores are going to seem really high. It makes perfect sense why it looks so high. And clearly they are accepting tons of kids who did not send scores. It is not the only data point that is going to drive your child into the accepted pool or the non-accepted pool. Yes, ma'am.
Did any of the reps comment on the fact that last year's seniors had fewer opportunities to take the exams than this year's seniors, and that they expect a trend in a different direction?
No, they don't. You know what? Again, we don't spend a lot of time in a college visit talking about scores because it's not as important to them as it's been in the past. Villanova, for example, said what many, many reps are saying. They're going to look at this year's current freshman class as well as the current sophomore class and the current junior class, where SAT and ACT reporting was wonky. And they're going to make a judgment. If those kids are doing fine academically, these things might just go away. Now, they won't go away for everyone. Frankly, I get the impression that some schools use the mandatory score, i.e. Georgetown, as something that maybe would stop kids from applying because they have so many applications. So again, I don't think you should really worry about it too much. It's a thing. If your scores are here and the average score is here, then send them. But they are even hesitant to even wanting to report these scores because they know how out of whack it is.
But that said, that is our question to them as well. We're a well-supported community. Do you have expectation that our children did a lot of test prep? And our response is no, because for a lot of students, they've always had trouble testing. And so they tried it, didn't do well, they walked away. They're like, scores are score optional. And most of the colleges say, when we say score optional, we mean score optional. If you don't send them, we don't think beyond it. We evaluate your application based on what the pieces you have sent. So that's where I'm going with that.
Although if you're not sending them, your GPA better be good. Because there's got to be, something showing your prowess in the classroom.
And that's where I'll still say, if a child had a bumpy road and some of the grades are pretty low and they're a good test taker, those tests show them in a good light. So I may recommend that they do send it.
Can you tell me what's the average score? You're talking about average and high score, but I don't know.
So it's different with each college. So our scores are above the average of the state, say. So generally speaking, we do pretty well, in our state averages. But So the best schools will look at the top of the range, which is that 740 to 800 range. So those are the most competitive schools. The second tier schools, probably still in the 700s, the high 600s to 700s. Okay, so.
That's a heart attack score. You know, that's a high score.
Oh, ridiculous. So.
That would not have been my scores, and I turned out okay. But those are high scores, 700 and above.
Those are very high, yes.
If your student is close and there's an opportunity to take it again, would you say focus more on academics and getting through this tough fall, or sit for it one more time? It's like,
We might have two different ways of looking at it.
Yeah, I would say concentrate on schools.
And I would say, go for it one more time.
Welcome to the world of college applications. Yeah.
So it depends on the student, how they feel
Yeah,
about
you
it,
know,
how
I would-
prepared they are. Have they been preparing to do it one more time, or have they done nothing and are going to sit? Well, they're not going to do better.
Yeah, at some point, there's something to be said for giving it your best shot, whatever you think your best shot is. I just think on a beautiful fall morning, 4 hours and a little extra sleep would be a good thing. But
And I like to stress my
yeah,
kids.
that's why you're. Yeah.
So we're kind of in a similar situation where we're like a point away from getting to the average, and it's an EA school. So the next test is October 22nd. So we're in that situation, like, do we submit it anyway, or is she going to put in her application and then take the test and then send the scores later? Like, how does that work?
I would put it in her application, have the scores automatically sent. And if she doesn't do particularly well, they won't, they still just take the highest scores. So put it. Yes, and that'll get there within 10 days, so probably in time to sit for committee. They'll wait for those scores to look at those for the EA scores.
And you all should know that it's an algorithm that sends the score. So in other words, I'm Amherst, I'm the computer system at Amherst, and you're sending your scores in. Amherst has automatically got an algorithm where they are just going to send through the best scores, so that the rep is not sitting there looking at 74 scores. That's a slight exaggeration, but maybe only slight. So you shouldn't worry about that so much, to Cindy's point, about sending it, who's going to see it. It literally is being filtered out by an algorithm on that college campus. Correct.
Right, and no, she won't. There's no downside to that. If you suddenly see a score that's low, they're still going to look for the probably would never show up in her application. The better scores will show up.
Would that algorithm also be the case for kind of smaller international schools, and do you think they might be looking at the details?
I don't know, to be honest with you. I can't imagine that there's a school out there that hasn't been sold these algorithms. But again, Europeans schools are slightly different in how they handle things. And scores are important to them. They don't care about activities and sports and things like that. So.
But they're looking also more at the AP scores in most
Right.
of them. So.
Right.
Okay. Glad
Okay.
I cleared all that up for you. Huh?
Yeah, we got through the mud.
Recommendations. So we've asked the kids to choose 2 teachers to write for them. And when we sit with them in their senior appointments, we really review that they've done that right and invited them correctly and worked with them. And we really ask them to choose teachers who really can speak to their strengths within the classroom. They don't need to have this great friendship or anything like that, but know them in the classroom. So if your child is on the quieter side or didn't feel they had that great connection that some kids feel with the teacher will speak to them speak about their work in group work, their contribution to class, things like that, so that they can speak to them as a student and a scholar. I had a student today who really wanted their physics teacher to write for them, but he didn't do particularly well in physics. But he really, that was important to him. And so he went to the teacher and asked, can you write, given the fact that I never turned anything in on time and I was, not that good a student in your
With
class.
a charming personality.
But the teacher could really speak to the issues that he had with that and how strong he was in the classroom in terms of his ability to pick up on concepts, test well, and overcome some of those things. Turning in work was not his thing, but he's a smart kid. So he's able to talk about that. So, those are all the things that you want to have a teacher who could understand that about your child, whether they're really good at it or not. So it is a risk to do that. And so I asked him to go speak with the teacher specifically about that, and they had a very good conversation around it. So you don't necessarily have to eliminate someone because you weren't the best student with them. But so we help them with that, and we've asked them to go see teachers to do the sort of face-to-face kind of work with talking to teachers about what they'll write. And then how to invite them through Naviance and go that route. I also talked to kids about a recommendation aligning with their interests. So if a student is interested in physics or something related to physics, it may be a good idea to have that teacher write the rec. If a student is really interested in writing, or something along those routes, it's more important that they have an English teacher than someone else maybe. So all of those also go into the decision as to who to ask at this point. But they should touch base again this year, even if they talked to them last year in the spring about writing for them.
And also, teachers are writing these letters of recommendation, which are little gems, on their own time. So it is lovely if and when these letters of acceptance or not come in, that your student touch base with their recommenders. I mean, I think that's just a way of seeing the process all the way through. And, a thank you note, or at least a showing up at someone's door to thank them personally for, again, taking their personal time to write this letter of recommendation. We have awesome faculty here. I think that's just the way the process should be played out in the world of Mrs. Carroll's Miss Manners book, but that's what I think it's important that they thank them. Does anybody have any questions about recommendations? Yeah.
Should he just double check that he's confirmed with his teachers that giving recommendations, but she just confirmed that they're on.
I don't think it needs to. I mean, if he's invited him or her through Naviance, teachers do have those deadlines. That's how they work. If a day after October 15th comes and goes and you don't see it, that it's been uploaded through Naviance, it's a good time just to then say, just a gentle reminder, I've sent out for my application for October 15th. Will the rec be going soon? It's fine if those materials go a few days later. You have to recognize that the applications go in. There is a good solid week or two as they're uploading and getting organized before anyone's reading your child's application. And so if some of our paperwork gets in a couple days late, it's not on your child. There's no penalty there. It's just that their application has to be on time.
Yeah.
If you waive being able to see the recommendation letter, you'll still know that it's been uploaded.
Correct. For those on the recording, the question was, we're supposed to say what the question is. It's whether, even if you've waived your rights to see the recommendation, you are able to see that it was uploaded and submitted through Naviance.
All right, before we get into just the actual body of the application itself, just a reminder that Financial Aid Night is via Zoom for New Canaan High School families on October 19th. The link will be sent out and published. And also the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, opens up October 1st. There will be some workshops. Norwalk Community College usually holds a really great workshop. If you have questions about filling out the FAFSA, that we will post those dates, again, through social media and the weekly Ramagram information, also in the principal's weekly message as well. But I always take this opportunity to remind you that even if you've been saving since the moment you found out you were pregnant for this this perhaps $1,000 a year challenge ahead of you, and if paying for college is going to be okay, that you have it all set, you are doing your family a disservice if you don't have one of those dining room table conversations about how you're paying for college. On the road to adulthood, knowing how money is being handled in your home on their behalf is very, very important. And this is a perfect opportunity to talk about responsibility so that when they end up on that college campus, they actually go to class, that they actually are taking advantage of every speaker on that campus and the career services and everything, that you are investing in them a significant amount of money. So again, this is a serious conversation. It deserves like a Sunday afternoon chat. And also it's an eye for your children into the world of savings and loans and things like that are really, it's an important adult conversation to have. And again, I suggest that you all take advantage of that at this point. Does anybody have any questions about financial aid?
I just want to also add that financial aid deadlines are often different than the application deadlines. And scholarship for merit aid sometimes is a little bit different too. So just keep that in mind.
And also, Mrs. Granite does a really great job with all sorts of local merit scholarships. We'll let you know all about those deadlines, but they usually are late winter, early spring. And you'll be hearing more about that. That would be like the Kiwanis Scholarship, the New Canaan High School Scholarship Foundation, the Sapienza Scholarship through the New Canaan Community Foundation. So there is some merit money out there also, and there certainly is institutional merit money through colleges as well.
My daughter went to Syracuse many years ago, and she had taken out some loans. And it was very interesting that they made her take a quiz so she would fully understand what it meant to take out a loan, how much money she'd have to make in order to afford to pay back these loans, what she would pay each month. It was really impactful for her, for a young lady who always said, "Mom, we have plenty of money, just go to the ATM and take it out." So it was really good for her to really sit down and understand, what does this mean for your near life after graduation, in terms of, a few $100s a month that you have to put aside to pay back very minimal loans. So it's a very important piece, as Sue said. Kids are working on their essays at this point. They'll be coming across, they've got their main essay, and they've done a lot of that already, and working on that. And so many of the kids are sharing them with me, which is good. But there is a few of the smaller ones that I think we did talk about last week about, really making sure that they're looking at those. Those are really important and should be really directed to the college's institutional needs as they have reflected in their websites and speeches and things like that. So just a reminder to keep looking at that. I have seen some essays that were English essays from last year that are nice stories but don't really talk about the student in terms of what they're bringing to the college. So it's always important for them to look at those, and does it reflect who they are as a scholar and a student, not just, a pretty story. So I continue to work with kids on their essays. The main essay's kind of done. I'm not going to ask them to redo them at this point, beyond doing some minor editing to bring things up to speed. But the smaller essays, they sometimes will get them after they've hit submit that there's an additional one. Sometimes they put in a particular major, it generates another essay. So again, just be very mindful of those, and they have to be particular to the school. The COVID question's still on there, and that's again a conversation we have with each student as they come through, how they're responding to that. I have found as I'm writing recommendations that I'm referring to 9th and 10th grade as wonky years over and over and over again, whether it's they lost a year of a sport or they lost opportunities for leadership because they didn't get back to it till junior year. It seems to be impacting kids in ways that we didn't originally think of. And as we're talking about it, you can see where the impact has been. It can be in terms of kids were afraid to jump into honors level courses too soon, and then jump junior year. There's all different ways that this seems to have had some impact on kids that I feel like, for me, it's worth mentioning every time in some way, shape, or form, either academically or in terms of their co-curricular activities. So we continue to look at those and work with the kids on that. The writing workshop, we're going to blind you with messages on this.
Yeah, thanks to the PFA.
Yeah, it's on the 27th. Is that tomorrow?
Today.
Oh, today. It's Tuesday. And that's tonight for kids to work on those small essays.
I was interested to hear you talking about the COVID issues. When you're talking about that, are you saying that in your counsellor recommendation you are addressing these issues, or are you actually advising the children to talk about the fact maybe they didn't take on classes in lecture?
So far, it's been me I've been choosing to do that as part of it, and it's part of our discussion when we're talking about should they or shouldn't they talk about it. Generally speaking, the colleges say for that question is if there was a large impact that they'd like to hear about it. I have trouble deciding what's large, so I'm always saying more information is better. Generally, and let them decide whether that was worth it or not. Most kids have generally said they don't feel like it's been had much of an impact. They adapted. They did well. Their grades were fine. So generally, the kids haven't felt a major impact, but some have had some really positive things happen too, which I think are a good place to say that they worked on a new project or picked up. Running or something that they couldn't do otherwise, or focused on an interest that they never had in the past. So.
If their GPA soared down, is it worth them talking about that and why that happened, or?
I think it's worth talking to the counselor about, but yes, probably. If it really had that kind of an impact, and we saw junior year, even junior year was impacted by freshman and sophomore year. So I'm kind of, it's sort of a tough one to answer. So, but in general, I'm pretty open to putting something there if they feel like there's been something that they felt like they'd want to talk about. Okay.
Any other questions about the essays?
Share them with your counselor. We really like to read them and help them with the final little guidelines and stuff.
And it's another reason why it's important that your children actually read their emails, because once they submit, in some cases, a preliminary part of the application, it will then say, okay, you'll get an email back saying, we've got it. Here's how you set up your portal. And sometimes there's an actual question in the portal. So it's important to stay on top of the emails also, which I know it's a lot. Colleges send a lot of stuff. But that's important, that reaction to the portal. And that's where they're going to find out the status of their application as well.
I don't believe that is it? It was recorded last year for a short period of time. Is it? It's going to be recorded? I think so. I think it's available for a short time because it's an independent company that's doing it. So it's not ours. So.
I think there was a comment last year because the students' faces around there, and they didn't want to record it. And I don't know, Christy, I think we were emailing with you. I'm not sure what
we recorded it for internal use, so that they wanted to use
Again, we appreciate the PFA's support of this.
And the Writing Center.
And the Writing Center
They're,
also.
they're the ones who've really put this together.
Yeah, there's
And
so-
that is such a useful tool for kids. I always tell them that. It's like, I'm there to say the overall, you're getting the impact you want or not, or you want to dive into this area more, but go to the Writing Center for that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's amazing resources in this school as far as the essays are, well, and through the whole process, but certainly as the essays are concerned. And, you know, I would caution you, when your child electronically signs the Common Application, they are saying everything that they have submitted is true and honest and their work. And so colleges can readily spot something that has not been written by a 17-year-old B-plus student. And so, again, I caution you to make sure that this is your children's work. Editing and help with the guidance counselor is great, but anything above that is verboten, and you're signing your name. It means something. So interests, there's 10 spots on the Common App for interests. That doesn't mean you have to fill every single spot up. And also, work would go in that. I think especially from our zip code, if you have a summer job or babysit regularly or take care of family members or have a family responsibility, that certainly can go under the section called interests. But you certainly don't have to have 10 things. Also, I've been hearing from reps that if they wanted a resume, they would have added it to the Common App. That resumes that come through the mail are not as appreciated as you might think, because then it has to be uploaded to a file, and they didn't ask for it. And the application, a rep said the other day, you know, we're looking for kids that also can follow directions. So I took that to heart and will caution you also about the resume section. Some schools offer it through the Common App, some schools don't. Does anybody have any questions about, the other thing, if you belong to SLOBS, for example, or NCL, don't abbreviate anything. I advise your child to spell everything out. And certainly if there is something that is of such a particular interest for them, there is a section at the end of the Common App on anything else we should know. If that interest is so particular or so special to them and they haven't explained it anyplace else, to talk to their counselor, because that might be a good place to explain it.
And finally, what happens to the application after you send it out? You've hit submit, and as I said before, the application sits until all the materials are, the other materials, recommendations, our school profile, our information, the transcript get there. Once they've received everything from all the different places, then and the file is noted as completed, it goes to the first reader. So the first reader is usually the person who has come here for the school visit, is generally the first reader. They may be a regional rep for us, that they handle all of Fairfield County, New York City, or something like that. They're reading all the recs from this area. And they will look at your child's application sort of, it's a beginning glimpse of it in context of school and region. So they look at the opportunities that they had available to them. How much did they take advantage of those opportunities? So that's what comes into play in the first round. They look at that, they read the recs, they understand the child in context of the school. Then following that, it might go on to committee. So every school's a little bit different, but different ones do it different ways. And they sometimes read in pairs so that they have two different eyes on the same application and making decisions together in this way. And that's where they consider the larger applicant pool. They understand this is where the class is starting to be put together, where they're understanding, oh, we need, that oboe player or that lacrosse player or something like that. Usually lacrosse players are already in, but they're looking at kids across the board and how does each child fit together to form a class. So that's where that begins. And they look at academics and geographic information, demographics. They're looking at everything. And then finally, it might go back to the original reviewer or the big boss who has to make the final cuts and stuff. So it is a process. Each read is maybe 15 minutes of your child's application. It is not a lot. That's where, we hope for the best. We hope your children are kept seeing in a good light, and we hope we have good relationships with the reps, that we're working with them constantly to make sure your child's names are front and center when they're looking at it. But you do have to realize they're looking at thousands of applicants at that point. And you don't know if they're reading your application as the first one in the pile of the day when they're fresh, or the last one before lunch when they're hungry and cranky. So every little thing can impact what happens to your child's application. And that's where things are unfair. And we can't count on anything going, anything in that process. We count on who they are as people and what they've put forward. That's why we ask for you to have a really good range of schools on your child's list, because we don't know what happens from there. If they are deferred or waitlisted in the early round, they have good opportunity in the second round to apply to other schools or to reflect on what they could do differently on their applications for their next schools. So there's always good opportunities to think about it. And if it's something that's really unusual and we couldn't understand why they would have been deferred or denied a school, counselors are glad to make a call to see if they can get more information. Oftentimes, we don't get much of an answer beyond that we had thousands of applications and everybody's good. So, but we do our best in that round.
With that said, you should know that Cindy speaks to this because she sits on, several colleges have invited her to help to look at post-review process, how the process played out. So this is actual information at Holy Cross, at University of Richmond. It's a good thing that we have someone who's out there doing that. Also, you should know that every year, based on the previous year's decisions, the school counselors target maybe 30, 35 schools that once the rep comes to visit, we've invited the rep to spend an extra 15 or 20 minutes with us talking one-on-one with the counselor. So does it always help? It helps us understand their decisions some more. So the school counselors have taken a great amount of care with what I know is really for a lot of people, a tension-filled process. But I've been doing this for 20 years. Cindy's probably about the same amount of time. And I've never really not seen it work. Is there disappointment? Yeah, because sometimes life is disappointing. But I've never really, at the end of the day, when kids come back in December we have the college freshmen come back and talk to the seniors, and we also invite a cross-section of them to talk to the Board of Ed about the process and about their education here. I've never not seen a kid get up and say, oh my God, it was the worst thing ever. In fact, really, it was my 5th choice school, but I can't imagine not having the friends that I have now. So with all of that said, we're doing the best that we can, helping your children navigate what I know is a challenging process. So I think that to lose sight of the fact that this is the only senior year this set of kids will have is doing your kids a disservice, and it's doing you a disservice too. You've got post-prom, you've got the yearbook, you've got watching your children grow up. There's so much growth senior year. So I would just, tell you already what you already know, and just to pay attention to your kids and to enjoy it, because it goes by fast, really, really fast. My daughter is worried about potty training her 2-year-old, and I said to her, they don't allow kids in diapers to go to college. So remember back to what you used to worry about and think of where you are now. Good job.
Almost.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Is there a list somewhere of like what schools are visiting and when?
Yes. The list is posted on the bulletin board outside the school counseling office. The best list for parents to look at is on the school counseling webpage. On the left-hand side, you'll see college visits. It's the entire Google Calendar of visits. And also, for your students' sake, it's on Naviance. You can see it there too, but Naviance is the vehicle through which they must RSVP to the visit.
If the visit is, a school is popular and it fills, is there any way it can be moved to a larger space? Or-
No, they can just come and talk to me. Yeah.
I heard that you said that you have to sign off if you're doing ED form. Is there one for EA or no?
No.
Because it's not binding.
Yes, AP scores, you just self-report at this point, and then when you matriculate to a college, you'll send them.
Yeah,
for-
it's too expensive
for
to send them
credit.
to everybody.
Yeah. Behind you over there?
Just to tag on to the college visits, are those just purely sort of informational, or is it more of a chance to demonstrate interest and or interview, or what is the form?
So, some schools, for example, Georgetown, Boston College is coming this week. Some schools, Dartmouth, they don't really care who's sitting around the table, in as much as they're not going to ask for any demographic information because they don't track demonstrated interest. Both Dartmouth and Boston College say the best demonstrated interest is an early decision application, but that is not always the wise decision for the child. Some schools care deeply about who's sitting around the table and take every bit of information. They put up a QR code and your children scan, and they have all of their demographics. So it depends on the school. Really, anyone that's in person now, the visits have been terrific. They've been very specific and granular, and the ones on Zoom are still a little bit, a little more like a info session. But no, this is an opportunity for your child, as I always say, to kick the tires. Again, this is a very big investment that you're making, and your child should get from the rep, what is that engineering department like, or can you really get your first choice classes? Because they all say you can, but you know that that's not true. So, so it's a time to be a little more specific. Yes, sir, I think somebody over here had a question? Yeah.
Required? Does it just depend on the school if it's required?
Yeah, not all schools interview. Some schools, you are invited to interview with an alum based on your application. As soon as your application comes in, you will be notified by the college that an alum is available to interview you. I'm happy to do mock interviews with kids. I've got 2 scheduled today. I've done 3 already. So we're happy to help your children shine in that respect, but not all colleges interview. So certainly if the interview is offered, I would say 90% of the kids should take advantage of it unless you just can't interview. And that's true of some kids. It could help you. A good interview can help you, but a bad interview, since not every student in the world that's applying gets to interview, it's not going to kill you, okay? But they could be an important piece. And it also is a chance for you to connect with, again, the college. Yeah.
Do you see any benefit in the application or negative to determining a major, going in undeclared?
I think determining a major, depending on what it is, could possibly help so that they can get a sense of where you fit in to the college. Some majors are so super competitive to get into, it might actually hurt you by saying that. I think of computer science as one of those. So it really depends on the school. And so tough to answer that question.
Yeah, your kids have been very discerning. I'm very happily surprised because you can hear them ask those questions by saying, they'll say to the rep, well, what schools are the most competitive of your college, if you actually have separate schools and you're not just a liberal arts college. And the rep will say to them, well, this, engineering, we have X number of seats for, 8 times that many applications. And so maybe you don't, maybe you want to go in under a different school, under the School of Liberal Arts and major in econ. There's been a lot of questions about transferring within schools. So your kids are on it, which is great. But Cindy's right, it's not, there's no perfect answer like most of this.
In general, the colleges are trying to get an understanding of how you fit in with their university. And so if it's because you have a specific interest that you really want to go towards a major that they specifically have, then it's good to talk about it. And it's important so that they can have an especially the large schools. Where are we putting you? So
yeah, schools like Syracuse, for example, you know, maybe your first choice is the Newhouse School of Communications. You're a future TV broadcaster, but it offers you a second and third choice. You could say to Syracuse, I want to come to you so badly, you pick my second choice. Or you put in your choices. And Syracuse, for example, if you've applied ED and you don't get your first choice, it's not binding. So schools recognize that there's, you know, that this is, for schools that have many schools under their umbrella, that this is something that kids are struggling with and thinking about. Yeah.
So I'm sure this is covered in like the sophomore and junior year, covering Naviance, but I wasn't able to know that. So is the only way a parent can get access to Naviance is through your student's password. So if your student doesn't want to share that knowledge with you, you just kind of have to trust them.
or ask them just to open that screen for you then.
And walk away.
Walk away.
Let them walk away. Does anybody else have any other questions? Well, you know, you can always shoot us an email or give us a call if there's anything else that you're thinking about. There aren't any silly questions. It's silly not to ask a question if you're really curious about something. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.